1, 2, 3, 4.
Woo! That's what you need.
Here we are, Winston Salem, probably the last really big crit of 2023 for those of us in the Southeast, right, Rob?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is the 3-4 race. You also went and did the 2-3, but the 3-4 has the most to kind of for us to talk about. Um, the first being this is a figure eight course, so it's got 8 corners. There's also some downhill and uphill. It makes this race really selective. You have a really good start sliding in about eighth wheel. Can you kind of walk through what your thoughts were after pre-ride and sort of what you and our newfound teammate Caleb's plan was from the jump?
For this year, they did something new to where, as you can see, it's coming down here. It's a big downhill. It's big sweeping, 2 corners, and then it goes straight into this gradient. It doesn't show it because I don't know why my camera was messing up, but it peaks out at 6 or 7% on this hill. And anybody that has done this can compare it to being shorter than Athens Twilight as far as that hill is concerned, but it's steeper, and so it's very pitchy. The whole plan was coming into this is that Caleb was going to try and take a flyer. I was going to test my luck as far as sitting in the pack and saving as much energy, and then kind of just seeing what was going to happen.
Gotcha. Yeah, and a little bit of context. There are a couple teams here. I guess the biggest presence was the Velocia Sport team, sponsored by the National Cycling Center. They had what, 3 or 4 guys in this race?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So like you know how a Cat 3 field plays out. It's usually like 2 or 3 teammates, and pretty much it's not like one team controlling the entire thing. It's usually like 1 or 2 guys, and they have a plan. And if they're a little bit lucky, then the plan will work out. But I mean, like, we're pumping a lot of watts on this hill.
Yeah, so you're doing 600 watts up this hill, just trying to. I mean, you're having to close a little bit of a gap, but I mean, yeah, seeing 5, 6, 7%, you're doing 400 watts just to kind of stay in the draft, and you're doing 600 watts, and their gap opens up, and you're kind of forced to close it here because these 2 guys clearly don't have the legs. Thankfully, this Milligan guy kind of comes around you, and you're able to ride his wheel. I think that's something you're really smart with is your ability to force other people to do the work. Um, one thing when I race with you is I'm always hearing you yell things for people to do different things. And for some reason, everyone always listens to you.
If you are the team leader of a crit race and you're saving enough energy, you can be the one that's actually thinking what should be going on in this situation. So, and you have 4 other teammates that are not supposed to think and just do. So a lot of the times, I'm not even talking about myself in general. Like our guys that we ride with, they will they will yell at commands, and we're not supposed to think. We're just supposed to do and hope and trust that the team leader or the guy that's supposed to win, right, knows what he's doing, and that's up to him. That's the responsibility that he decides to bear.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a key thing with the way our team races is that we're usually pretty organized and we're pretty aggressive. We're usually trying to send guys up the road or keep things under control.
And I mean, there's always the question of, what should I chase after? What shouldn't I chase after? And, everybody that has raced solo has asked that question because you don't know we're not pros. We don't have like our own, baseball scorecard where it's like, oh, he's won this, this, and this, and this is this guy's Palmares and that kind of thing. I should go with him because he's a good guy. You pretty much have to look and be like, that looks like something I should go after, or nah, I don't think that's going to go. And it's just one big gambling match.
Right. And I mean, so part of that in the amateur fields of 3-4 is that in a 3-4 you have guys who've been racing 4 or 5 years, and you have guys that started racing last week because you can auto cat up from 5. So part of that decision making is like looking at somebody and deciding if they look strong enough to to be a threat, right? And there are a couple guys in this field, like there's a guy in baggies, and so when he's off the front or attacking, the alarm bells aren't always ringing. Which sometimes that's a bad thing because that person could be super strong and just like hasn't gotten the memo that that a race is a fashion show. But it's one of those things where if you're racing solo, you have to be selective, and that's one of the things you kind of look for is okay, who looks strong and who looks like they could roll a break.
At some point in time, I believe three guys go off the front. I'm not close enough to the front to know when that happens. If I was in a team of like three or four or even five, and we got the word that somebody was off the front with 20 seconds or whatever, then we'd immediately go to the front and start pulling, or
Right.
or we would start working. Or if I were the leader, I would be yelling at my guys to get to the front and just start pulling super hard to bring it back.
Yeah. See, that's one thing our team does really good job of is we're all able to move up to the front of a race when needed and make those really hard digs like all year long if there was a break. Like sometimes there were breaks where our own teammates were in, but we didn't like the composition of that break, or we felt like the teammate that was in that break couldn't out sprint the other people in that break. We would drill it hard and bring it back and send somebody else up the road. And I think that's something that we can see those riders up the road. And, honestly, if it was our team pulling, I think we would have brought that back. I mean, we're dealing with, there's 6 or 7 guys in front of you, and those are the 6 or 7 guys that are willing to work and willing to chase this back. And you're in a race of 40 people. Granted, this race had a lot of attrition because it's so technical and because there's enough elevation gain for people to pop off. But, if there's 7 guys willing to do the work and there's 40 people that start, eventually those 7 guys kind of go like, what the hell, guys? Like we need to pull this back. And we do start to see that a little bit. They're just working a little bit less hard. Because it's just the same 4 or 5 of those guys that are trying, as you can see, someone tries to flick someone else through because they're just not, it's not working cohesive enough. And I think a lot of folks are probably looking for that Velocia Sport team to do some work because there's like 4 of them and, they're just, for whatever reason, not doing it. I see like 2 more riders try to bridge up. I mean, it's just, at this point, it's just chaos and you're kind of hoping, that it's going to kind of weld back so you can go for the sprint. Is that kind of where you're sitting right now?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, I'm hoping to get a free ride from somebody because this is not a course that you want to go off solo. You really don't want to go off this course solo or you're going to hurt. And when I say that it's harder in the amateur ranks, especially trying to get a result, is that all these guys are aiming for the same thing. None of these guys are domestiques, and if they are,
right.
then like get on them. They're doing more tactically wise for the sport. I don't even know if that's a word, tactically wise. They're doing more tactics
right.
than what you would find in the amateur field.
Right.
And I commend them for doing that because that's what everybody wants. Everyone wants to like see that kind of Tour de France tactics or whatever American crit tactics, pro tactics done in a race like this.
Right. That's kind of the Cat 3 the Cat 3 story, if you will. It's everyone wants to be a Cat 2 or they want to be a lifelong Cat 3. And so a lot of folks are just there's not a lot of tactics. People are wanting their own result. And the teams that are there, they're small and they, may not really be effective as a team. And I think that's one thing where our team really shines is we're able to be effective because we're willing to put, our own result on the line to help somebody else. If we have a designated leader every race and, sometimes that messes us up where, we've been in races where we've sent really good moves up and thought that was it. And we've gotten a little complacent and then, somebody ends their own race to bring back a move and, we're not accounting for that, right? You can be in a move with 3 other people and it looks good. It's got 30 seconds. Then all of a sudden, this random dude goes and effectively ends his race to bring it back. And you're like, why would you do that?
So at this part during the race, I'm kind of fed up, going back to the race. I pretty much go to the front, take a little bit of a pull into the corner, trying to keep our speed. Like, at this point, we know these guys are at the front. You can sort of see them up in the distance, but I mean, they got a healthy gap on us. So,
Yeah, I mean
and I
you're
mean,
almost
like,
out of sight.
I go to the front and I do my due diligence, right? And I get off, flick an elbow. That's when I get off. I mean, I think I might have taken a 20-second pull just to try and keep the momentum going. And I think that
Yep.
the other guys get the picture. But at this point, it's like 4 or 5 guys that are willing to chase us back.
As a solo rider, everyone's like, oh, like don't do enough work, don't do so much work, kind of, let other people, let the teams do the work. But, in that scenario where it's a lot of individual riders and the breaks up the road and people are kind of starting to lose that motivation to chase. Like sometimes, you've got to go and take a hard pull just to let people know that, okay, like we're still working. And just taking that hard pull will get guys to start working
It doesn't have it just shows people that like you're really willing to work, especially in a larger group,
again. Yep.
and that and instead of just like sitting in, because when people just sit in, like everybody's just like, people start doing stupid stuff, like they try going off the front, which like burns their energy. We're not being very efficient. You got attacks going left, right, and center. You
Yep.
know, um, you see it all the time if you're watching the tour. And I'm not trying to compare the tour to like an American bike race or anything, but like if people start looking around and people start doing these like flyer attacks, then like nothing's actually gonna happen.
Yeah, right.
Nothing is gonna come back quickly enough.
Yeah, right. That's the thing is like the group working together keeps it efficient, keeps it fast. You kind of know a break's gonna go the distance when the guys who were willing to do the work just start trying to send flyers to bridge up because those guys have effectively given up on the chase and they're like, okay, this is my back, so I have to get up there.
I'm like, I really need to take another pull. So like I need to drill this hill pretty hard to try and get everybody up this hill as quickly as possible, because that's obviously where they're making up most of their time. That just
Right.
so and people are skipping turns and stuff. So like I take another short turn, it might have been 20, 30 seconds, but still like all these little effort is I'm gonna pay for it down the line. But if you can bring that gap back, then you're in for a chance, especially if you're rolling the dice later on.
Right. I mean,
So
that's worth the gamble because at this point, if the break stays out, that's the podium, and
I think this
it's
is, you know
worth
what?
burning that match.
I really don't know why I took that hard of a pull.
Well,
I think I was just fed up.
yeah, you're probably just mad, but honestly, that's probably a good thing because now you've got 6, 8, 9 guys who are all of a sudden a little bit more motivated because you've really amped it up, and now they kind of can see the group up ahead, right?
Yeah,
I
and
think that's part of
I see all these other people that I haven't seen during the entire race that have been, trying to sit in, right?
right.
And most of the time you don't want to, you don't. I mean, most of the time, like you don't want to be like giving people a free ride or whatever. But in this course, I'm just talking specifically this Winston Salem course, nobody's taking a free ride this entire race, because like if you're at the back, you're doing 500 watts. If you're at the front, you're also doing 500 watts. Like it doesn't matter.
And the break's kind of out of sight. And usually when a break's out of sight, the bunch they kind of forget about it. Like if they can see the break, they're going to chase hard for it. But the second that break is out of sight, they kind of lose focus a bit. So, I mean, are
Mm-hmm.
you at this point like, okay, we can't see the break? We're going kind of hard, but we're not going hard enough. Do you kind of start thinking, okay, maybe I need to go and try to bridge this, or are you still content kind of sitting in and hoping it comes back together?
Quite honestly, it's not my responsibility to bring it back. It was definitely whoever the largest team was, it's their responsibility. Like nobody has a large team here. So what do? Right? You gotta hope that somebody burns their own race by going off the front. Or the guys in the break, you can count on getting a little bit tired.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking I need to do something. I need to do something quick because everybody seems to get really tired. Um, and people aren't working. So right, yeah, this is when it happens.
Yep.
This is when it happens. And then I decided, I said fuck it. So I decided to go. I rolled the dice. I looked behind me, and
Sure.
people are, and they just let me go. So I was like, okay, well, I guess this is my life now. Um,
Right.
and
But I
then
mean,
because I'm sitting, yeah,
one
go
thing
ahead.
you and I have worked on is like you've always been a bunch sprinter. You've always been like a Caleb Ewan. Um, and I've kind of turned you into more of a Michael Matthews, really. Like you're more versatile. You're able to roll a break now. I don't think 3 years ago or 4 years ago, like right when we started working together, like I don't think you would have been able to do this. Like I think you would have had
No,
to kind
definitely
of
not.
sit in.
Now, for context, for anybody that's listening, I think I get a maximum of 20 seconds.
Yeah, and
So,
that's pretty big of a gap for a solo
mhm.
rider. And I mean, like at Sunny King this year, you held a gap of 20 seconds for, I mean, 20 minutes,
Yeah,
right?
that was
Like,
20 minutes. And this is if we're listening, I think you may see the lap counter on the right hand side somewhere. 3 laps to go. There it is.
yeah.
You
I
have,
mean,
you have to go back and
there's
watch
three
the
to
tape,
go.
but it's
So,
3 laps to
um,
go.
yeah, I mean, you're off the front at the really the business end of the race here. Like, there's not much, much more time. The break kind of feels like they've got it going, um, and they're still out of sight. So in the group behind, they're starting to be like, oh, it's three to go, but they might not be as motivated knowing they're not really riding for a podium either. So you're kind of in this weird dead man space where you still have to drill it as hard as possible because the break could be starting to sit up and play some games, and the group behind, they're either have given up or they're starting to really drill it. So you're
Hmm.
really having to commit like all the way here. Is that kind of your thought?
That was kind of my thought, and I think I'm coming through that 3 laps to go. I'm getting word from the start finish line that like one guy, I don't know who told me it was, but one guy had slid out and taken out the other one of the guys in the break, and so there's just one guy up the road.
Right. Again, it's the
So
business end of the race. So the groups, there's two options for the group. It's okay, keep drilling it. And they probably got motivated again after the announcer was like, hey, the podium's still up for grabs because, half the break crashed out. So, there's also that aspect where maybe you'd stayed away had the break not crashed itself. But the group's now like, okay, like we're able to get a podium. So they're way more motivated now at this point. So I mean, eventually you do kind of get brought back. Once you cross the line here, it's one to go. And, you played it really smart because you didn't, just go all out and completely cook yourself in this solo effort. You kind of rode sustainably and rode smart. You kind of took the gamble of if I ride this pace, maybe the group's not going to chase me, or or if they do chase and catch, then I still kind of have enough in the tank to tack onto the group and try and sprint for a result. So that's
yeah,
kind of
I
where
mean,
I
part of me is like my own. I mean, part of me thinks that like I should have been going deeper, or I should have been like all in for this. But I mean, like, yeah, this is 1 lap to go. I get caught. Velocious goes to the front. They're trying to get their guy in a good spot. And so it's just like, well, like I'm almost at 190 beats per minute, so I need to just stay where I am. Oh, there it is, 190 beats.
yep.
So that's kind of so I had to go deep just to tack onto the back of these guys. I'm content with where I am because it's like I'd have to burn a huge match just making up one position on this last lap. Um, but like the damage has been done. I may have one big match left in me, which is a sprint. But there's not a whole lot that I can do. Um,
Right. I do
Honestly,
think you could have.
I could have just jumped. I should have tried jumping them here, when everything slowed up just
Well,
a hair. But like, it's
I
hard to
think,
say. Go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I think you could have slotted in the third wheel there on that last right hander because the two guys were going a little bit way outside, and you could have cut them there and sort of dive bombed that and been second or third wheel going into the sprint. But your mo at this point is to save energy and kind of stay fresh as you can for the sprint.
Right,
Um,
and most of the time, people are just like, "Oh man, like if you're sprinting, like you want to stay as fresh as possible." And it's like, no, man, like in a crit, like it's whoever is the least screwed and it has the best legs
right,
at the end. Like everybody's screwed. So
right.
whoever it is. So anyways, going to this last corner. So we're going in the last corner right now. I let it a little bit of a gap open up and I drop 1100 watts just to try and hold on. I peek around my left shoulder just to make sure no one's coming around me, and I finish
Yeah.
in fifth. You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of how it goes. And overall, I'm not unhappy with it, but I mean, like I could have raced it a little smarter. And of course, like the more people that you have in a race, the more tactically sound that you can actually be.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Um, no, I think you did a good job. 1100 watts at the end of that is quite the effort. So I think you did a really good job, and you rolled in for fifth. I mean, that's a result at one of the biggest crits of the year. And so yeah, I mean, all good, represented the team well, and came away with a pretty solid result.